Hello everyone and welcome back to a new video. Today I kind of want to do a kind of like a rundown, breakdown, daily brief almost style of current geopolitical news for you. Without further ado, let's kind of just jump into it. First, I kind of want to talk about the China-U.S. Semiconductor kind of arms race of sorts. Um, Kind of highlight, it's not like the classic, Cold War style situation here. We're entering into something more complex. It's a systemic global competition where technology, geography, and economics and military power are merging into one continuous struggle. The United States and China are fighting over semiconductors, as I mentioned, um, not just as commercial goods, but as the foundation of military supremacy. Uh, Russia and Ukraine are still locked into negotiations that, we see a lot of headlines about it, but there's no real signs of peace there, unfortunately. Iran is rebuilding its missile arsenal while nuclear talks are kind of returning to normal, which is kind of non-existence. Or blusters, unfortunately. Also want to talk about and highlight Europe is scrambling for soldiers. Kind of like what we talked about in the last video, there is a new expectation from the United States for them to be able to stand on their own, and unfortunately, that's just it's going to be difficult. It's going to be a difficult road ahead for Europe, but we will talk about that a little bit later. India is accelerating naval expansion. Kind of becoming a more and more important player within the region. Whether hopefully ends up being a good partner for the United States in that region would be amazing. Right now, they kind of like to play both sides of the fence between China and the United States, but certainly a lot of potential there. Massive population, increasingly industrialized nation, a younger population as well. So a lot of potential there. We'll see kind of how that shakes out over the course of the few years here, but we will be talking about their naval expansion today. Cuba also facing energy collapse. Likely you've heard about the Cuban oil refinery fires. If not, we'll talk a little bit about that today. Um, let's see. We also have on tap Iran's internet blackout shows that the digital domain is now a battlefield, not just it's not just the town square, so to speak. It is also increasingly becoming a battlefield, whether it be against external threats or, unfortunately, sometimes internal inconveniences or threats to those in power. Um, and as always, these are not isolated events. These are all interconnected to some degree or another. So let's kind of jump in and get things broken down and talk about what we've got on store. The most important weapons in today's geopolitical competitions aren't tanks, they're GPUs. Uh, Washington has expanded export controls to close indirect pathways that allowed advanced AI chips to reach China through third-party countries. The specific focus is high-performance processors, the kind that power large language models, LLMs, military simulations, autonomous systems, and next-generation surveillance networks. These chips enable real-time battlefield AI, hypersonic missile trajectory modeling, autonomous drone coordination, advanced cyber warfare capabilities, predictive logistics systems. Just to be honest with you, they power the next generation of warfare. It is by all intents and purposes an arms race of sorts or a gold rush of sorts, depending on which, if you're in the consumer side or the governmental side of this system. In modern warfare, compute equals capability, and the U.S. understands this. By restricting access to advanced semiconductors, Washington is attempting to slow China's military modernization, not just its commercial AI sector. Beijing, however, views this as strategic containment. Which, to be 100% clear, it is. Uh, uh, for better or worse, when we brought China into the world stage and stopped their isolation, you know, uh, we allowed them to become what they are today. Again, for better or worse, depending on your viewpoint. But certainly now we are in containment mode as they are, making moves and making efforts to try to push back against the world order that, obviously at one time ostracized them from being able to participate. Um, so China is responding with scale. Massive state-backed semiconductor funds are being deployed to accelerate domestic chip production. The goal is not merely competitiveness; it's technological sovereignty. And here's where this becomes more dangerous. Semiconductors are geographically concentrated. East Asia, particularly Taiwan and South Korea. Those are kind of the two big players within the region, which is why we see so much back and forth between China and the United States in regards to Taiwan specifically. That's why we have such an investment in Taiwan as an ally currently. Now, when push comes to shove, I guess we will see kind of how that plays out. But certainly, we talk as though we are willing to do or go the extra mile for Taiwan. And I think so far we've put our money where our mouth is. But how that shakes out in the future, we'll see. But yes, Taiwan and South Korea dominate advanced fabrication of semiconductors. That makes the region not just economically critical, but of militarily decisive importance there. So, access to chip now determines precision weapon systems, missile accuracy, electronic warfare edge, autonomous systems advantage, as I kind of mentioned before. If supply chains fracture during a crisis, military capability shifts instantaneously. That's why fabs are expanding into India and Southeast Asia, and diversification is now a national security strategy. The semiconductor race isn't about iPhones, obviously. I mean, to some degree, it is. It is going to impact those industries as well, but certainly much more at stake there. So, it's really about who controls the architecture of modern warfare, and by extension, who likely is going to be setting the world order in the future. So, I do kind of want to highlight a few different web pages that I have pulled up here. So, we see this kind of push from lawmakers within the United States um, to try to press allies and implement controls where possible to try to limit the amount of steps that maybe China doesn't really have access to domestically, at least for now, to try to slow them down as much as possible. Which is, when China says that it is, it's an attempt to contain them. It absolutely is. Of course, it is. That's kind of what the super. That's what superpowers do. If somebody's trying to rise and challenge them, they have to try to slow them down, and they have to try to um, contain them as much as possible. Um, to try to maintain their status, right? That's just logically speaking. So, um, lawmakers also asked Donald Trump's administration to provide a briefing within the next month outlining its strategy for securing allied cooperation on broad countrywide controls targeting critical semiconductor manufacturing equipment and components. So they're trying to move quick on this, to their credit. It's typically not how U.S. lawmakers work, but I'm glad to see that they are moving a little bit quicker, at least in relation to this. NVIDIA CEO, if you've never heard of Jensen Huang, I'm probably mispronouncing that name, but hopefully not, has kind of talked about this somewhat recently here. And this is, it's an older article, but the information is still relevant, so I did want to talk about it. He's called these export controls in the past a failure. He kind of goes on to highlight, says the local companies, speaking of China, are very, very talented and very determined. And the export control gave them the spirit, the energy, and obviously, most importantly, here, the government support to accelerate their development. Um, and he goes on to say, I think all in all, the export control was a failure. China has a vibrant technology ecosystem, and it's very important to realize that China has 50% of the world's AI researchers, and China is incredibly good at software. That is, of course, 100% true. Um, Kind of highlight a little bit about what I mentioned before with China saying that this is an attempt at containment. They do make this accusation even as far back as this article is being written, saying that um, accusing the United States of abusing export controls to suppress and contain China. Again, that is 100% what we were doing. And if the roles were reversed, they'd be doing the same thing, of course. So, yeah, they go on to say this is typical unilateral bullying and protectionism, which seriously undermine the stability of global semiconductor industry chain and supply chain. Of course, it sounds like a reasonable statement. Um, but of course there are undertones and implications there that they're not going to say out loud, and they're also not going to say that they would do the same thing if the roles were reversed. So, it's really important to highlight there. Kind of moving on to our next segment here. We're going to move on and talk a little bit about Russia and Ukraine. All right, moving on to Ukraine and Russia, as I mentioned. Before we jump too far in, I do want to highlight this is an 11-day-old article, but I'm using this to kind of demonstrate a trend here for something that we'll talk about a little bit later. So just a clerical piece of clarifying information there. But as I was saying, peace talks in Geneva were described as productive, which is some good news there. But so far, a lot of headlines, not a whole lot of peace. So Ukraine continues to demand tangible progress, prisoner swaps, ceasefire mechanisms, humanitarian corridors, etc. Russia insists on recognition of territorial gains and Ukrainian withdrawals from contested regions before halting operations. Those positions are structurally incompatible, which means the war continues, in short, right? But the deeper issue may not be territorial control, it's endurance. Europe is confronting severe military recruitment shortages. In some cases, active forces gaps exceed 20%. Germany, the United Kingdom, France, and others are exploring expanded recruitment models, including service to citizenship pathways for migrants. This reflects a larger structural problem. Modern European societies are aging, which we'll touch on here in a little bit to some degree as well. Certainly a very important facet, not just for Europe, but for many other countries as well. Long-term mobilization strains welfare states and political cohesion. You really can't afford a lot of these social programs and afford military expenditure. It's one of the benefits of the United States taking care of them for the last several decades. Um, let's see. Modern European societies are aging, as I mentioned. Meanwhile, Russia continues leveraging industrial war production and demographic resilience differently than Western democracies. I think that's worth highlighting to some degree, but we'll see how true that is here in a little bit as well, and I'll kind of allow you to make your own decision there. If 2024 and 2025 were years of attrition, 2026 may test sustainability. And sustainability often determines outcomes more than tactics. The battlefield is not just in the Donbass region, it's in recruitment offices, defense budgets, and political will across Europe. So kind of like I was talking about not too long ago, towards the beginning of this little recording here, is um, there's a lot of talks, a lot of headlines about being productive, etc. But uh, there doesn't really seem to be a true desire for peace from really either side. So I did want to highlight, you know, this was back on the fourth, so this is kind of the initial round of peace talks again. And maybe you've heard this news, maybe you haven't, but not too long after they began talks, Russia started to uh, carry out strikes while the meetings were happening, which is uh, certainly not a good way to try to get peace, if that's something that you actually want to do. So, uh, but I did want to highlight as well, some U.S. official statements here. Good news is that for the first time in a very long time, we have technical and military teams from both Ukraine and Russia meeting in a forum that will also be involved in with our experts, U.S. Military State Marco Rubio. I don't want to say talks alone is progress, but it's good that there's engagement going on. Certainly, it's good that they're talking, but so far we haven't seen a lot come from those talks. Um, so it looks like kind of going a little bit further down here. Um, Polls show that the majority of Ukrainians oppose a deal that hands Moscow more land. Kiev residents told Reuters they were skeptical that new talks would bring a major breakthrough. There's a quote here. Let's hope that it will change something, of course, but I don't believe it will change anything now. Uh, we will not give in, and they will not give in either. I think that sums it up pretty nicely there from the gentleman. Um, Rubio goes on to say that both sides are suffering tremendous damage, calling it a senseless war. Certainly would agree with that sentiment. This has faced some criticism from some people's, saying that this is a Russian talking point, etc. I don't know. I don't really understand that point of view. I think that it is a senseless war. Certainly not one that I would place the blame of at the Ukrainian feet. Certainly, but at this point, it's senseless in that we're losing hundreds of thousands now. As I think the last figure I saw was I don't remember exactly, but several hundred thousand people have died in the course of this conflict, which is absolutely horrible. Um, and really just you know obviously commendable deaths on the side of Ukraine for defending their territory. Hats off to those gentlemen, uh, but unfortunate that they had to die, to say the least. So, um, moving on. This is have some more talks coming up. I believe on Tuesday of this week, and we have continued strikes happening over the weekend, with two civilians dying, one in Russia and one in Ukraine from drone strikes. Um, Unfortunate that these civilians are having to die for this. But unfortunately, that is the way that war. It's hard to stay, safe and not touched in these sorts of things, especially this conflict, especially with the amount of drone usage that we're seeing. So, yeah, so, and it does go on to say these attacks came ahead of another round of U.S. brokered talks that will be taking place on Tuesday and Wednesday in Geneva. Um, an interesting kind of development also to highlight here is, I guess maybe some propaganda coming out of the UK. Although I believe surely that most likely it is true. But the United Kingdom Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper said the UK and its allies have exposed a barbaric Kremlin plot, quote, to poison opposition leader Alexei Navalny. I'm probably absolutely uh, Navalny. I don't know. Russian names are difficult. But yeah, so it's an interesting development there. How accurate that is, I don't know. But there was another article that said that the United States didn't really contest this as well. So presumably, at least some level of accuracy here too. Which again, like I said just a few moments ago, I would not put it past Russia, and certainly not put it past Putin to do something like that, kind of right out of their playbook. Certainly KGB style tactics there. So, Russian embassy in London obviously is denying this, saying that that they don't really have any nothing to do with the death. And described it as feeble-mindedness of Western fabulists. Uh, Again, typical rhetoric coming out of Russia. There, neither here nor there. Will we ever know the truth? Probably not. But certainly, like I said, most likely to be accurate there. Um, uh, Worth highlighting, Russia has not really made as much of the advancements that it hoped to, uh, and really, to be honest, that it kind of needs to in order to survive. Certainly, with any means of credibility in the future. So certainly, I believe at least now, assuming that the United States and Europe continues to support Ukraine, excuse me, support Ukraine, um, their best course of action may be to try to gain something at the negotiating table, albeit they obviously do not feel as though they have enough leverage at this point to gain that, which is why we're seeing the style of negotiations that we are. So, um, but I did want to highlight again, kind of an overlooked facet of this. I think all like very often we hear that the world is overpopulated, etc., etc., etc. For the most part, that's completely inaccurate. Certainly, obviously, there's some dense cities, etc., and that's a different conversation. But a lot of major countries, whether it be in Europe or Russia, for example, China is another big one, Japan, and many other mostly industrialized countries face kind of the opposite situation where they need to. They don't have the population to maintain the society that they're hoping for. Most of these societies are aging, and they do not meet replacement numbers, meaning that when as these older generations retire and eventually pass on, they're not going to have the workforces to be able to maintain a lot of these factories, etc. So this is something that's been highlighted for decades. At this point, from geopoliticists such as Peter Zahn. He mentions it in his book. The End of the World is just the beginning. 10 out of 10 recommend that book. A fantastic piece of literature there, and it does talk a lot about societal collapses of certain societies. China being one of the big ones, Russia being one of the countries that are already kind of in the throes of that. China in the future, Japan in the future, etc. So, in the not so distant future. But all that to say, these are kind of why we're seeing Russia take some of these steps that we are, is because if Russia wants to maintain its status as being a world player, and be able to power project, which obviously it does, any empire or power is going to want to maintain itself. They need somehow access to a population that's going to be able to help sustain its manufacturing base. Otherwise, your society cannot maintain its industrialization and begins to collapse back into a pre-industrial society. Um, uh, or just collapse. That's the alternative there too. So, um, pre-industrial societies have much more children. It's a very easy, very verifiable statistic. Whether it be uh, a lot of different reasons, right? More help on the farm, whatever it may be. Better sentiment, better feeling about life, something, whatever it is. That a lot of different theories there, a lot of different possibilities. But certainly, industrialized societies begin to degrade over time and have less children. Um, and the war, to be clear, is not really helping that. Unfortunately for Russia, they wanted to make it a fast regime change in Ukraine, but obviously that what was supposed to be a short operation has turned into a very long war. Um, with this figure here citing 600,000. Um, uh, Russia is stating that as in 2024, deaths outnumbered births by roughly 600,000, which is absolutely. Uh, I mean, it's a rough statistic to come back from. Obviously, the war is exacerbating that to a vast degree, but uh, not only that, but they're losing more population through these sort of younger generations tend to be more urban, tend to be more educated, leaving the country because, obviously they feel maybe they feel a particular way about the war. Maybe they just don't want to get drafted, whatever it might be. Losing a lot of human capital, which is obviously very difficult if you're in Russia's shoes, and not very ideal. Um, which is again kind of highlight Ukraine. A lot of mineral opportunities within Ukraine. A lot of sometimes being called the breadbasket of Europe in some spaces. Uh, you know, but Russia they have to acquire the human capital in order to maintain its relevance into the future, which is in part why we saw the operation in Ukraine. And to be honest with you, um, if it had not been for Ukraine putting up enough of a fight to not immediately collapse on day one of the operation, likely we would have saw that expand into other regions already, and could have devolved into something much larger. Um, which is why we've also seen such a massive push from European countries and the United States to back Ukraine as well, at least in part. Obviously, there's the moral side of it as well, of the justification from Russia and the invasion in and of itself, but certainly some benefits there for the West in slowing down Russia. Because to be frank, Europe was not ready to defend itself, and the United States would have needed time to get there. So I guess thank you to Ukraine certainly um, for also buying time for the West as well as standing up for yourselves. Um, yeah, Putin's decision to do it to invade Ukraine. It's not just about minerals, etc. It's also to try to reverse some of those population declines and human capital loss uh, that we were talking about, and it's not just Russia. China faces that future as well, partially due to China might not even be in the situation if it wasn't for one-child policies, etc. But certainly, as industrialized as China is, population aging and societal collapse is something that's at least on the table in the future. Um, I guess that remains to be seen what exactly will happen. Certainly, these are just people that are much more intelligent than myself predicting the possibilities of these things happening. So, um, I guess that remains to be seen, and I'm interested to see kind of how all that shakes out. Next, we are going to be moving on to Iran and its resurgence of missile development, etc. So let's move on to that now. All right. In the Middle East, Iran is recalibrating. Following direct tensions with Israel, Tehran is prioritizing ballistic missile restoration and expansion. Instead of focusing on a nuclear enrichment negotiations, Iran is reinforcing conventional deterrence. Missiles offer immediate leverage. They can be deployed rapidly. They signal readiness without crossing, some of the red lines that certainly the Trump administration has drew in the sand of nuclear thresholds. State media frames this as a defensive deterrence, but from a regional perspective, missile expansion compresses reaction timelines and it reduces warning windows. And to be frank, it increases escalation risk. So, add in domestic unrest and the possibility of foreign support to protest movements, and Tehran's security posture becomes more defensive and and more reactive. The Middle East remains one of the few regions where miscalculations can trigger rapid escalation. Iran's shift towards this missile prioritization reflects a belief that deterrence must be visible and immediate. So certainly an increase there in tension with trying to build up its sources again of missiles. We did see, even as recent as December of 2025, where Tehran was launching missiles towards Israel, etc. So between Iran's missiles and its proxies of Hamas and all of the other kind of subsidiary um, uh, forces that it uses to carry out its missions um, as covertly as possible, although not so much anymore, considering most people kind of know that that these groups are working for at the behest and oftentimes under the direction of Tehran. So, worth highlighting here is the possible regime change. Um, uh, we'll see. I'm obviously rooting for the people of Iran. It is the responsibility of the people to uh, if there is uh, a government in charge like there is in Iran who is willing to uh, mass kill civilians for protests and not recognizing and supporting the interests of the people, um, then I think that the citizenry has an obligation to resist, and protest. And if those protests are not heard, then escalation measures need to be taken. I'm a firm believer. I believe it was Thomas Jefferson that said that every so often the tree of liberty needs baptized with the blood of tyrants. I'm slightly paraphrasing there, but more or less what he said. Um, and I believe that to be true, and I believe that needs to take place in Tehran. I am hoping that the people of Iran take their not just their immediate future, but the future generations of their children and grandchildren and their children's their grandchildren's children into account and take charge of their country and make their will heard. So um, yeah, all that being said, it's most likely being supported by the United States somewhat subvertly. I'm sure certainly CIA assets, etc., already in the region trying to support and foment as much as possible And to be frank, I am perfectly okay with that, and hope that it happens more. I do. Sorry, this was obviously a smaller topic, but I did want to highlight, something that could be a flashpoint within the region. Um, Certainly, uh, a lot of interest in this region. And we could be seeing, hopefully not, but we could be seeing further conflict between Israel and Iran at some point in the not so distant future. Um, Certainly on the table of possibilities there. The United States obviously will back Israel. They've, when we talked about the national defense strategy, they've routinely called them a model ally, insofar that they have the ability to be able to stand up for themselves with minimal U.S. Support. So we will continue to see what happens there, and kind of just see, more or less how those talks shape out, and maybe Tehran will come to its senses and kind of come back to the negotiating table. But certainly would not put any money on that in the near future. Also got some quick things to cover, like I mentioned, India maritime expansion. So the Indian Navy plans to commission 19 warships in 2026. We've already seen some of those as of recently begin to procure some of these vessels. A record pace enabled by modular shipbuilding. Why are they accelerating? It really comes down to China's naval fleet is projected to reach roughly 435 ships by 2030. And control of the Indo-Pacific sea lanes is becoming a defining strategic competition. Not just for the players within that region, but obviously, as we talked about in the national defense strategy, really for anybody who wants to be a player on the global scale going forward. So, obviously, the United States is in the mix there as well. So, India is trying to position itself not just as a regional actor, but as more of a maritime counterweight to China. So hopefully, this is a signal of them being more inclined to United States partnership in the future. But that kind of remains to be seen. Um, but yeah, so far, approving the purchase of 6 new P-81 Neptune maritime patrol aircrafts to boost their coverage in the Indian Ocean. Obviously, this is the aircraft here. Uh, Certainly an investment there. Obviously, we did also say that accompanying this, supposedly in 2026, we will see 19 new warships as well. So that is a market improvement. Notating here, they're going from 12 to 18 aircraft. So, uh, you know, uh, it's a massive jump forward. Adding those 6 more aircraft there to help support those naval assets that they're hoping to have by the end of 2026. And hopefully it works out for them. And they become a little bit more integrated with the United States as far as a partner in the region. Moving on to Cuba, oil refinery um, uh, crisis, fire, whatever verbiage you'd like to use there. Um, Tightened U.S. oil restrictions is obviously triggering fuel rationing and rolling blackouts. In Cuba, the oil refinery fire is not helping that at all. Government is prioritizing defense and food distribution over cultural spending. Solar expansion is accelerating, but households are resorting to wood burning in the short term. Energy shortages often precede political instability uh, as a general means. Cuba's resilience will be tested by obviously the duration of these shortages and issues there, and there's a lot of talk that that Cuba is primed for possibly a collapse as well. So certainly would be to the benefit of the United States with our new, or not really new, but revived dedication to um, trying to focus on the Western Hemisphere and making it as stable as possible and as friendly as possible. I mean, Cuba's right on our doorstep, and they are not very friendly to say the least. So, some type of pressure there uh, for a regime change certainly would benefit the United States, but we'll see how hands-on we get with that. So far, it just seems to be sanctions and some pressure. So, but all in all, we'll see kind of how that shakes out. Uh, did also want to highlight real quick the Iran blackout. So hundreds of thousands relied on proxy networks like the uh, Siphon, I believe it's pronounced as, to bypass state controls, obviously trying to shut off as much as the outside access as possible within Iran. Um, so, whether it be trying to stop atrocities from being leaked, etc. Satellite system Starlink has reportedly been smuggled into the country to maintain connectivity for dissidents. So, kudos to Elon Musk and the people over at Starlink to provide those services. I believe at pro bono for those people. Massive W there, and really cool to see kind of an American industry in Starlink be used in such a way. It's been used in Ukraine. It's been used in other conflict regions and natural disaster regions to try to help these people have access to other people and be able to get information out without restrictions. So, information domain is now indispensable and inseparable from political power. Um, information is, knowledge is power. So, cut the internet and you cut coordination, you cut outside sentiments, etc. So, but restoring connectivity, and by all intents and purposes, you restore the resistance. So, um, keep pushing, for the people in Iran. Keep pushing, keep fighting, and hopefully we see a return to Iran of yesteryear, where they were one of the preeminent societies on the planet in many regards. So, um, look at the pattern. Kind of like we talked about before. All these are kind of interconnected. So let's look at the pattern. Semiconductors determine military advantage. Ports determine trade leverage. Manpower determines sustainability. Missiles determine deterrence. Connectivity determines narrative control. This is not a world dividing cleanly into two blocks. Uh, it's not bricks in the West. It's a lot more complicated than that. It's a world where multiple powers are maneuvering simultaneously across economic, technological, and military domains. The next decisive shift may not come from a battlefield. It may come from a supply chain disruption, a demographic collapse, a cyber escalation, or a miscalculated missile launch. The global order is not collapsing, it's rebalancing. And a rebalancing is rarely peaceful, unfortunately. We've seen that more than once. But if you want deeper dives into any of these theaters, whether it be US, China, tech talks, European mobilization, Middle East deterrence, please let me know below, because obviously geopolitics is not slowing down. The world's only becoming increasingly interconnected, which means the possibility for these types of of situations only becomes more and more frequent. So it's accelerating rapidly. Um, so yeah, thank you very much for watching the video. I hope you're having a great Sunday. Um, Christ is King, and I love you. Bye.